about identifying variables that we can manipulate to try to have a positive impact upon behavior. And one of the things to keep in mind is that as a teacher, you set the tone. There is a brilliant quote from the psychologist Haim Ginott. "I've come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated and a child humanized or dehumanized." One of the things that can happen, our tough kids can make us feel powerless, as I talked about in the previous segment. But you absolutely and inescapably have the power to set the climate. As a parent, again, my children are grown, but all of you as parents know every year that you're taking your kid to school, even when they're heading into secondary, on the first day of school, you're just wishing, hoping, and praying that they will have good teachers. Because you know that this teacher can make the child's life miserable or joyous, and this teacher will have an influence in whether this kid develops a joy of learning or an aversion to learning. So this is about just trying to upgrade our policies, procedures, our rituals, and routines. And there's really 5 broad variables that you can manipulate, and the Champs book is organized around these variables. There's 9 chapters, and they basically are organized around 5 sections. Here's the section. Sections number 1, structure. The way a setting is structured has a huge impact on the way people behave in that setting. 2, teach expectations. We need to directly teach kids like a basketball coach teaches a basketball team, which does not mean you tell them how we're going to function as a team on the first day of practice and then we never practice thereafter. We're going to teach it and practice it and rehearse it to a level of mastery. We need to observe student behavior. We need to monitor. If we're not supervising, kids will not exhibit the best level of behavior that we've taught them to exhibit. While we're observing, we need to interact positively with students by non-contingent greetings. Good morning, Mark. It's nice to see you today. As well as age-appropriate positive feedback. And then we need to correct misbehavior calmly, consistently, and immediately. Let me give you a brief preview of each of those 5 topics. Let's first talk structure. Structure basically means this. Our physical setting, our schedules, our organization, our curriculum. Let me give you a non-school-based example of structure. Do you know what Disney World in Orlando, Florida accomplishes every July? Now, I want to talk Disney World in July rather than Disney World in January for 2 reasons. Because in July, the climate in Orlando, with all due respect to Floridians, is so hot and humid, almost nobody is doing anything outside. Okay? And in July, it's hugely crowded with tens of thousands of other people around. Epcot Center alone has 11,000 parking spaces. Okay, now here's what Disney accomplishes in July. We charge people approximately $80 a head to enter the park. Once they enter the park, we're going to make them stay outside the vast majority of their time. They will be crowded shoulder to shoulder with tens of thousands of other people in the heat and humidity. And the single greatest activity that people will be engaged in during their 10 to 14 hours, you could leave anytime you want, but when you pay $80 a head, you're going to put some hours in there. The single greatest activity that you and everyone else will be engaged in is the thrilling behavior I model for you now. Please observe. Standing in lines, herded like cattle, creeping at a pace never more rapid than this, and almost everybody leaves the place feeling like they had a pretty good time. It is a behavioral and attitudinal miracle that they can pull this off. I just want you to think about the way Disney structures lines. I went to Disneyland as an 11-year-old kid, and at this point in time, I am 57 years old, so this was 46 years ago. I remember lines that were 200 yards long, 8 to 12 people wide, and you would just go to a line and go, I'm looking for the line for the Matterhorn. Is this it? And if it was, you would follow it to wherever the end of the line went and get in the back of the line. You go to Disneyland now, or you go to Disney World where they built the whole theme park, you will still have some long lines, but if nothing else through the creative use of stanchions and theater ropes, they make your line a nice compact little rectangle. Now in both cases, the structured rectangle with switchbacks and the unstructured line, in both cases, they're 200 yards of travel and take you probably 10 minutes. But they know that the average visitor being subjected to this structure as compared to that absence of structure will be far less upset when they arrive at the attraction. They will enjoy the attraction more, and their overall satisfaction for the day will be enhanced. Let me give you just a few reasons that just that structure makes a difference. One is, if I'm no more than 30 yards as the crow flies from the destination, even if I can see I have 200 yards to travel, it is just not as psychologically daunting as when the destination is 2 full football fields away. They can create shade. They could provide misters in ways that they can't. And I want you to think about it. You're in the heat and humidity. You decide, yeah, let's get in this line. And within seconds, there's a nice, cool mist and shade. Do you want to know what you do? You go, ah. And you know what that does to your attitude? This organization is trying to take care of me. Not because I'm a baby and they need to take care of me, but I'm a human being and they care about that being in the heat and humidity can be oppressive. Another factor, the switchbacks prevent the incivility of others cutting in line. And the interesting thing about structure is when things are structured well, you don't notice structure. When things are structured badly, you notice structure vividly. Another factor, the turns themselves, you can mark your progress by the turn. And each turn that you round, you are going to feel progress is being made. Now, what does any of this have to do with school? It has everything to do with school. If you compare just opening routines of different teachers, you will see some teachers' opening routines who are so dynamic, but also so compact that within 4 minutes we are right into instruction and the kids are literally just sucked into instruction with the power and compelling nature of this teacher's opening routines. And in other teachers' classrooms, the opening routines take so long that the kids are actually less motivated at the end of that opening routine than they were when they first walked in. So we're going to talk about a lot of structural examples. We're also going to talk a lot about teaching appropriate behavior. And kindergarten, first grade teachers, you are already best at this section. Kindergarten and first grade teachers make no assumptions about what kids should know. They do not, for example, right after lunch, say, okay, everybody, we're going to come over to the rug for story time. They go, okay, class, every day right after lunch, we're going to come over to the rug. Nobody move yet because I want to tell you how we're going to move. But first, let me tell you this. This is a rug. They make no assumptions. Here's the problem. The older the kids get, the greater the possibility that as a teacher we start thinking this. And at first glance it sounds compelling. There is a reason that it's not. These kids are 5th graders now, or you middle school people. These kids are 8th graders now. They should know how to behave in a classroom. Here's what that does not recognize. There is no national pencil sharpener policy. Reflect on that silly statement. There never should be. There never should be a school district pencil sharpener policy. There should never be a school-wide pencil sharpener policy. She structures her room differently than she does, and she structures her room differently than he does. There is no right way to structure. But can you accept that right in the row that you're seated in right now, that if there's 5 teachers, there's at least 3 fundamentally different pencil sharpener policies? And each of us believes that ours is the one that is morally correct, ethically right, and if we were in control of the world, it would be the national pencil sharpener policy? Champs is never going to dictate your pencil sharpener policy. It celebrates the idiosyncrasies of you as a teacher. And this is not at all a criticism, but your room is an idiosyncratic mix compared to the colleague seated right next to you of rituals, routines, procedures, as seemingly inane as the pencil sharpener policy, but there are hundreds of those idiosyncrasies. And the more teachers a kid has had, the less they know about what you want from them, because the broader the range of teachers' idiosyncrasies this child has experienced. So at the beginning of the year, you're going to do a lot of direct teaching of appropriate behavior. There's 2 chapters within the Champs book that we will work on with that. We also need to observe student misbehavior. Here's the psychology behind observe. I am driving on an interstate highway, and it is open road. I never weave rapidly in and out of traffic. But if it's reasonably open road and the speed limit on this interstate is 65 miles per hour, I am not traveling 65. And I ask that each of you in this room, just to yourself, ask yourself, do I travel 65 or lower if it's open road? And if you do, out of 100 of us in this room, I would guess there's probably no more than 5 that could honestly say, I never exceed the speed limit. Some of you, if it's 65, are going 68. Some of you are more like me. If it's 65, you're going 74. Some of you are going 85. But regardless of whether it's 68, 74, or 85, if the speed limit is 65 and an officer shows up in front of you, beside you, or behind you, what do you start traveling? 65. The presence of authority makes us look like the most law-abiding citizens anyone has ever seen. It's just a truism, and so the more directly we observe kids, the better off we are going to be. So in the short run, that means visually scanning and physically circulating. In the long run, part of what we'll look at is taking an occasional snapshot, metaphorically, using data to identify, is my management plan working the way I want to or not? And I'll be teaching you how to take those occasional snapshots. The I, STOIC, structure, teach, observe. The I is interact positively. Good morning, Amanda. How are you today? And giving meaningful, age-appropriate positive feedback. Increasing the frequency of our positive interactions, because here's something that I'll hit very hard in a later session when we are dealing with the I. We as teachers fall into patterns of paying more attention to misbehavior than we do to positive behavior, and we inadvertently then reinforce our kids who are starved for attention for misbehaving. I'm not talking about reducing your attention to misbehavior to 0. The C of the STOIC acronym is we have to correct misbehavior, but the sum total of your positive interactions must exceed minimally by a factor of 3 the number of times you have to correct misbehavior. But you do have to correct misbehavior, and you have to correct misbehavior fluently so it doesn't interrupt the flow of the lesson. You have to correct misbehavior because you want to provide a demonstration to the other kids. There are consequences for misbehavior, but you are never expecting that you are going to have powerful enough consequences that a kid will behave strictly because of the consequences. The consequences are going to be too weak. We will prevent more misbehavior with good instruction than we will ever prevent misbehavior through the threat of consequences. But we'll be looking at managing all of those variables. Your consequences then need to be brief, calm, consistent, pre-discussed, immediate, and reasonably private. You want these not to be public theatrical displays. Reasonably private. And we'll talk about the whens, wheres, and hows to do that in subsequent sessions. This does, by the way, come out to the STOIC acronym, STOIC, just as a way of reminding yourself about this. And STOIC, one definition of STOIC is tending to remain unemotional, especially showing patience and endurance in the face of adversity. Guess what, folks? Your behavior problem, kids, are the face of adversity. And here's what they need. They need you to be so patient and so enduring that here's what you communicate to children over and over and over again. I will not let you be anything less than you're capable of being. And every day has to be a fresh start. I will not let you be anything less than you're capable of being. And it doesn't matter how much crap you may have given me in previous days. I will not let you be anything less than you're capable of being. And you know who the absolute master teachers are in your school who really make a difference in the lives of at-risk kids? It is people who are so non-negotiable about that here's what they communicate to at-risk children. I can outlast you. Part of good behavior management is simply wearing your children down. You are going to have such high, relentlessly high expectations and doing everything you can to try to help kids achieve those expectations. So